In this Blackboard lesson, we're going to talk all about lines. All right, so let's start out with an equation for a line. All right, so we have our line, y equals 2x plus 1. All right, so let's look at the slope-intercept form. It's y equals mx plus b. So we know that 2 is going to be m, and 1 is going to be b, right? So m represents the slope. So we know the slope is going to be 2, and that b represents the y-intercept. So we know the y-intercept is going to be 1. All right, so what is a y-intercept? The y-intercept is the point at which the line crosses through the y-axis, and that'll be when x is equal to 0. Because when x is equal to 0, we're going to be on this y-axis. So we know the y-intercept is 1. So right there, the line is going to cross through the y-axis. And we know the slope is going to be 2. But how are we going to graph this line, right? The way we're going to do this is a function. So this formula is a function. If we plug in an x value, it'll give us the y value. So let's plug in a couple x values so we can graph this line. So if we make x equal to 1, it'll be 2 times 1 plus 1, which will give us 3. So it'll be 2 comma 3. All right, now let's do a negative number. Let's do negative 3. So if we put negative 3 in there, it'll be negative 3 times 2, which will give us negative 6, plus 1 will give us negative 5. So at point 3, it'll be negative 5. So right here. And then once you get those 3 dots down, you can just draw your line. So let's do that. All right, now we have our line. Now let's find the slope, right? So we already know what the slope is because we've been given it in the slope-intercept form equation. But let's find it as if we didn't have that. So the formula for slope is going to be rise over run. So you could pick any 2 points on the line, and all you have to do is figure out how much the y value changed and then how much the x value changed, and you're going to divide the y by the x. All right, so let's pick this point right here and then this point right here. So these 2 points. How much does the y value increase? So it goes from negative 9 to negative 5. So that means that it increased by 4, right? So it went up by 4. And then how much did it increase in the x direction? So it went from negative 5 to negative 3. So that's an increase of 2. So we went up 4 and we went right 2. So we're going to put rise, which is 4, over run, which is 2, and that'll give us a slope of 2, which is exactly what we had right here for m. All right, so now that we have that, let's move on to the x-intercept, y-intercept, and midpoint. All right, so we already have our y-intercept as was given in the equation, but what's our x-intercept? Similar to the y-intercept, the x-intercept is just the point at which the line goes through the x-axis. And if you have your line already drawn, it's pretty easy to point out. So it's going to be right here. But if you don't have it drawn out graphically, you could figure it out using the equation. So we have the equation y equals 2x plus 1. And if you want to find whenever y is equal to 0, y equal to 0 will be whenever it's crossing through the x-axis. So think about it. If y is 2, that means it's 2 above the x-axis. But if y is 0, that means it's crossing through the x-axis. So we're going to rewrite this equation except make y equal to 0. So it's going to be 0 is equal to 2x plus 1. We're going to subtract 1 from both sides. So we get negative 1 is equal to 2x divided by 2. Divide by 2, and we end up getting negative 1/2. So the x-intercept is going to be at negative 1/2, as is plotted right here. All right, so lastly, we're going to do the midpoint. Okay, so what is the midpoint of line segment AB? We're going to use our midpoint formula right here. As you can see, we're going to find the x value of the first point, the x value of the second point. We're going to add those two together, and we're going to divide by 2. And then we're going to do the same exact thing for the y values. All right. So the x value of A is going to be 0. And then the x value of B is going to be 4. And we're going to divide that by 2, put a comma. So then the y value of A is going to be 1, and then the y value of B is going to be 9. So 1 plus 9, divide that by 2. So that would end up giving us 4 divided by 2 is 2, 10 divided by 2 is 5. So 2 comma 5 will be our midpoint. So 2 comma 5, so that'll be right here. The midpoint formula is also handy in some other circumstances. So occasionally the ACT will ask a question like, what point is 1/3 of the way between A and B? So they're saying it's going to be 1/3 the distance of A to B. And the way we do that is we just remove this 2, because the reason why the 2 is there is because we're trying to see what's halfway between A and B. But now we're trying to see what's 1/3 of the way. So we're going to replace these 2's with 3's, and that'll give us what's 1/3 of the way. Same thing if they ask us what's 1/4 of the way. We replace the 3 with a 4, and onward.